This episode contains language that is not suitable for minors. Please enjoy responsibly. And now, today's episode. All right. Hello and welcome to the Beatdown.
Hey, we're finally here.
That's right. How are you guys doing this week?
We're doing good. We're our gear started right up, sir.
I know. Unlike somebody else.
Yeah.
All kinds of technical
Here we
stuff.
are podcasting on a Saturday night. Saturday.
I know. I appreciate that.
Rainy Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Chris, after we finished the last recording, you texted about you're on a guided by voices hole. Are you still going down that rabbit hole?
I just, there was some stuff that I found that I really liked a lot. And did I forward that one over to you, John, and just said, hey, is this more? It is, it was like if Ray Davies had written a Who song.
You definitely put that in the text. Yeah.
Like it was, but it was fabulous, in that way, so.
and that's kind of like all their stuff. He's got that British accent, from the middle of Ohio, and he writes like I was funny. He came up on. I was listening to like NPR or something, and they brought up like guided by voices. Like, yeah, they're so prolific. He one time told me that he writes a song when he goes take a shit.
I think those guys mostly produce themselves, right?
And totally.
But like from record to record, there's like whole records that are just like, wow, they just decided to drench this whole thing in reverb, and it's just like for the entire record.
Yeah, the entire record I don't think takes much longer than to listen to the record. Like they literally like it's like there's 45 songs. They're like a minute and a half each, and they just crank them out. I don't think
all of them. I mean, there was one that I shared with you guys, and I had mentioned to Tony that we, something that I would like to cover with a band, but it's heavy as hell. So what I was saying was like that one particular song, it's called Romeo Surgeon, and it was on, I think, their last record, unless they got another one out in the last, couple of months, which is not
could have very
possible.
well possibly, yeah.
But it came out in mid 2023, and it is like, it's crushing. It is just a crushing song. It's just like, it is so, here's a guy who, has experienced beauty and pain, and just is letting it fly. And it's just unbelievable, and the band is right on it, I don't know. I dig it. It's got all the right ingredients.
They have constantly got to be, if they're not out playing live, just writing and recording songs, or at least, Robert Pollard is. I mean, it is unbelievable how much material he can put out.
Robert Pollard has written more than 1,600 songs, with over 500 of them being released under Guided by Voices moniker.
Wow.
That is incredible.
He, let's see, they've put out 3 albums last year. The most recent one was Nowhere to Go But Up. So I don't know if there was one in January, there's one in July, and I can't see what the actual date of this last one. But that so there you go.
I thought there was one that one came out in July.
Yeah,
like with a song called Romeo Surgeon on it that I liked a whole lot.
I just looked over at Spotify. It's Welsh Pool. What is that thing called? Welsh Pool Frillies is the album you're talking about. Yeah.
They put out another album since then.
That's so last year.
So Nowhere to Go came out in November.
So they're playing in June in New York. They'll probably have another album or 2 released for that before that show.
I think Doug has gone to see them recently to photograph them and stuff like that. And it said that they're just still completely incorrigible drunks. That
every time.
And it's like I share this kind of stuff with there's a friend of mine that I've talked to you guys about. He runs the record fair down in Maplewood and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Twice a year. When I hear the next one, probably in May, I'll let you all know. But it's a great record show. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, my friend's band was on tour with them, and they're like in fist fights, and Paul, like just drunk and obnoxious and just like going at him." And he's like, "They nearly came to blows." He was just like, and I've heard stories like that
Their whole
before.
career has been like that. Yeah. And he said that band is like Law and Order. They keep shuffling through players, and then the guys come leave and then they come back. Um, he's got a couple of guys, the drummer and the guitar player, Doug, who our friend Doug photographed, but he's been in and out of the lineup for the past 30 years, and he's a great guy. Um, Phenomenal musicians.
So the stats are the band was formed. First record came out in '87. They've released 38 albums and 19 EPs, and they broke up for 8 years.
Yeah. Right. And so you look up his solo, he did solo work, so there's more records, and then he had another band, it's like Tom York kind of thing. He had another just different name, but basically him and a couple other the same guys. Tobin Sprout is in, Tobin's out. Tobin does his solo record. It's basically all the same guys. So they easily, those numbers go up when you start including that stuff.
Oh,
What was that song that we did cover, Tony?
But for the pedestrians,
What was that one called?
Eureka Signs.
Eureka Signs. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. No, they just keep cranking them out, and they're great stuff. And I've been talking about it for years, but go see them live. These guys are just professional. They are a great band and know how to entertain.
There's so many bands that are out there right now, and that are like, I always think to mention to John, like our friend Phil, who lives out in California. Like I'm just seeing like, wow, Teenage Fan Club is getting back. It's just like,
yeah, they've been. I think they
the
just
Dandy Warhols I saw. Like all these, and I'm just like, oh man, this is right up Phil's alley.
Well, what was the one? No, what was the one that he came with? I hadn't thought about in friggin' 30 years.
Jesus Jones, maybe.
No, you came up with Jesus Jones.
Wow.
No, it was in Spiral Carpets.
Oh right.
Like they were like number 8 in the Manchester /
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've come together and they're touring or putting it out.
Well, it was just one of those ones that they seem to be doing these festivals out west. I send you guys those links every now and where it's like 5 bands and you're like, they still exist. And
Let's briefly talk about that one you put out that was the punk rock one, where it is like 45 bands. It's all in one day, presumably, right?
Right, and it's like No Values.
Yes.
And it's like it's almost sold out.
How many stages are they gonna have going on?
So it's weird that the way they have the ticket prices, it was sort of like no values, some values, little values.
Right.
And like
then there was like a VIP thing. Yeah.
It just looks like there's one festival after another and they're all like aimed at us.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's the thing is that it's cushy enough, I think, too, where it's not standing in the mud kind of classic. Like you go there and it's like, look, I'm gonna get my money's worth out of this babysitter.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna, if I get to go out it's gonna be a weekend, and I'm gonna see, it's like all in. It's like this is Hall Pass weekend, kind of thing. And
that one punk rock thing was hilarious because it was like, in that one day you could see every band that I've ever saw in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it listed like everybody that you could imagine.
Well, I mean, but there's like 4 of them, and because then you think I can't imagine, and then you like, there's all, but it's like there's like a ska stage with Bad Manners, and and then but it's weird. Like, then you have the Misfits and
Black Flag was on there, Suicidal Tendencies. It just went on and on. Rancid.
It's like it was very much that whole period of time. I'm trying to think. Bad Religion. Who else? It was somebody else was on there too. I can't remember, but
Social Distortion on there?
It gotta be because they had like every West Coast.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the story was then. Because remember, arguably, they might have been the most commercially successful for a period of time. They were getting banged on MTV, where Ram
Sure.
had a moment, but there was. It's just kind of weird the way
It's massive. My little brother went to the metal one that was out in, I guess it was in Arizona as well as California, maybe. And it was, Guns N' Roses and, but also like Judas Priest and bands like that. Like, and I think that was 3 days, Metallica.
Yeah, but that was like, those, it's like the giant, that's like the Coachella of metal. Remember they also had like that old cello one where it was
sure.
Like Paul McCartney, Roger Waters, the Rolling Stones, the Who. It was just kind of like that was just like So those were big ticket. This I don't know what the price is on it, but it's, if you think about it, arguably it's like if the headliner is the Misfits and like solo Iggy Pop. I mean, do those guys play a theater when they come to town? Well, I guess the Misfits around here did like Prudential Center,
the Garden, I think it was. Yeah,
but that was like, but it was like their first show in like of the original lineup in like 40 years or something, right? It was kind of like they were totally milking it.
So I'm guessing because they're listing as the original Misfits that Glenn Danzig is involved in this. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I would think so. I'm surprised. I guess I'm surprised how that's a whole other thing that I never paid attention to about that war between them. But,
well, I imagine with most of these bands too that they're like, well, we're not getting money from anywhere else selling records, so we gotta do something to make it.
Do you guys have any temptations or any thoughts about going in it? Like it's like, I'm trying to think. It's like I've been to most of the known, like the name brand festivals. But
that one in Vegas was intriguing to me. That punk rock bowling one.
Yeah, they do that every year. That one.
Yeah.
They also do like a series of. I think that I want to say there actually is like a venue that's a bowling alley that books a lot, and then they just do the big event every year, weekend or whatever it is. Yeah.
Have you ever been?
I've never been in love with that. Lollapalooza and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, I don't know. It sounds like I'm being a douchebag about it, but it's just like, clubs and theaters are fine and stuff like that. But once it starts to get it, getting too big, even Forest Hills was fine. You're like, okay, but that's about as big as just like, I kind of want to get.
Well, I mean, Lollapalooza was kind of like the thing that made it interesting. It was sort of like, wow, I'm getting like.
It was like the first time I'd been back to we weren't going to stadium shows. You know what I mean? Like back at a time, there was like maybe if you went on a one-off to see the Stones or Paul McCartney or something like that, I get it. But
that's what I'm saying. But Lollapalooza didn't have not a single stadium act. Like, there was the whole thing. It was like a gathering of.
But it was the biggest thing that I'd been to, since Stadium Rock. You know what I mean?
But I'm saying, but that's the model that I think goes to. It's almost like it's a gathering of your people, right? It's almost, and that's kind of like these groups. And so, to a certain extent, what I find interesting is, I almost don't want to go look in that mirror. You know what I mean? It was like we do a Beatles podcast, and I live in fear of going to a Beatles fest and going like, oh my god, you see yourself and you're like, fuck, I hope I really, it's like the FMU, the joke about everyone that listens to FMU is like in their parents' basement collecting records, and it's just like, wow, it feels like I'm in the cave. I'm in this little cave. You feel like you're bigger, you're broader than that. Yeah.
How many times have I said it to you? It's just like, what do you like? It's like, I like the Beatles. What do you not like? It's just like, well, the Beatles fans are kind of cringy. You know what I mean? Like
but we're them. You know what I mean?
And yet there it is, right?
Correction, John. We do a music podcast. All right. Yeah, I know we lean on the Beatles, but we do a music podcast.
Yeah, I understand.
It's for contractual purposes.
That's our thread. That's our thread. I'm just.
Can we mention, do you guys love Sam Mendes? Do you guys like his stuff? Like, the last thing I guess I saw was 1917, and
I
like,
did. Yeah,
I didn't love it. You know,
I was looking at his list of movies, and the ones that I have seen I do really like, but I think the last one I saw was Revolutionary Road. I haven't seen, like, I didn't see Skyfall, which I heard was really good. I'm you know.
I just caught that new Dune, not the new one, but the first episode of the Dune that's out now.
You're
Because
you're going off topic. We're talking about Sam Mendes films.
I know. I'm jumping in with it. I
well, there's a
actually
reason
watched
I
the
brought
movie.
up. There's
All
a
right,
reason
go
I
ahead.
brought up Sam Mendes.
Okay, it's leading in.
There's been some. I guess he's signed contracts or is in negotiations with putting out.
No, it is signed, sealed, delivered. Apple is
Good for you. All right, here we go. Give me the facts, John.
No, I'm saying no.
Tell us
Apple,
what it's. No, I'm serious.
I know. I know. The big announcement was Apple has, given Sam Mendes is making 4 individual Beatle movies.
Now, Peter Jackson is not involved in these. I would have figured he would have wanted to do one of these. No,
Sam Mendes.
this is all Sam Mendes.
Yeah, Sam Mendes is doing like 4 untitled, and an untitled John Lennon, an untitled Paul McCartney, an untitled Ringo, and an untitled George.
Yeah, all the backstories.
Right. So, well, I don't know. We don't know. That's all we know. So we don't know if they're going to focus in the 70s, if they're they're like bios, like, are they? They're not documentaries. He doesn't do documentaries, and that's where. I mean, Peter Jackson is,
What is he most known for? Like The English Patient? I can't. Or off the top of my head, I can't think of.
American Beauty was his like first film.
Okay.
And then probably 1917 was the most recent one that had a lot of.
Oh, he did the Napoleon one.
Yeah, or no, 1917.
1917 was the World War one.
Oh, I didn't even catch that one.
And then recently, I don't know this one. This is the most recent one called Empire Light. Do you know that one?
I don't.
I'm even reading it in British romantic drama, so I don't know that one.
At any rate, that it's a bold sort of sort of undertaking, to come up with 4 individual things.
So
without them, slipping into Backbeat or one of the Beatles films that we have seen that we could, that's been done about their backstory. When they get to that, are they going to do the whole John Lennon, and his mom and his aunts and his father and, just that whole,
Well, let's say, so here's the actual description. It says, the films to be released in 2027 will be the first Beatles biopics to have the full cooperation from Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and the families of John Lennon and George Harrison. So I don't know if that means, but if you're going to remember at the same time that is true of the Ray Charles movie, which was really good, the Elton John movie, right? The Queen movie, like they're, you know what I mean? They could be entertaining. I don't know if I will necessarily take them as, this is, it's a take on the story. It's the legend they want to print.
So when you said 27, they're all 4 are going to be released that year in 27? Is that the plan?
I don't know.
Literally, it said Cities would produce and direct 4 separate features films from each of the members of the Beatles to be released in 2027. So I don't know if that means it's going to be like the Kiss solo records and all on the same day,
Yeah.
or they're going to roll them out.
Well, that's my when you first said that, my first question to me that I was going to throw out at you was, who's his first? They start with John, and then it's like, okay, you're last of the 4. We finally released your, so maybe that's why they have to shoot all 4 of them, and then
So now if I'm
releases.
If I'm marketing this, who goes first? Come on, it's obvious.
John
You're
Lennon.
marketing this. Who goes first?
Yeah.
Unless you want to start with Ringo.
It's not obvious.
Answer is Ringo. The answer is Ringo.
Because you work your way up.
Okay.
Well, it's not been working your
I
way
see
up.
your point. Like I see your point immediately.
Right. You're gonna. I'm interested in this. I want to go see these. And the first one is Ringo. Yeah, we should go see. You know, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to go see it. I'm going to wait for John or Paul. No, it's like, no.
That's
Otherwise,
what, yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it.
Stuck on the end. You're like, yeah. Unless it's like, wow, these were so interesting. I want to see the ring. You know, I think the Ringo one goes first.
I think you have to do. You
What
have
if
to
the
film
Ringo
all
one
four.
gets like 0 traction?
Yeah.
Right? That's you have a built-in excuse too. It's like, well, it's the Ringo story. It's like, yes, he's sick in bed for most of his childhood. Like you actually could get a really good story out of it.
You think that the people who are putting this together put out arguably their, you know, from a planning point of view, the weakest one first?
Well, I'm not calling it the weakest movie. It might be the best movie.
I'm just saying, personality-wise, Ringo would be the one that most people would say. I'm not saying that I find it that to be the case. I don't want to
The
slag
public,
Ringo,
Chris.
but
The
like,
public.
you know, he's, you know,
It's the commoner.
he
Yeah.
would be like, oh, where's Paul McCartney? Is he coming?
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's kind of like, you know, okay, I'm going to give you some candy, and you start with, oh, great, you're going to give me candy? Here's some candy corn.
But there's a lot of people with a lot of money trying to back something up and get it off on a, you know, and you arguably are starting off with the weakest product. And what if that doesn't get the buzz?
Okay.
Are they going to be able to take that?
You
Their
make
egos?
second? So it has to be, so to a certain extent, like, you know, I hope Ringo's alive in 2027 to
Sure.
See his film.
see the movie. Well, he'll see it, but
Do,
like,
do you think the actors cross over at all into the other biopics at some point? Like
George,
somebody
a biography without John Lennon in it.
say it again. You cut out.
George was able to write a biography without John Lennon in it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a true statement.
Yeah.
Johnny, George Harrison did write a biography where he didn't mention John Lennon.
I don't know if did he mention the other Beatles at all?
I should say an autobiography. Sorry.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so there's so, you know, I mean, that's the thing is maybe it's completely non-Beatle. Or it's their, or that's the thing is we don't know. Is it essentially, they're going to shoot all 4 movies at the same time, and it just, each one is going to have breakaway scenes about like the you know, what was George thinking and what's going on in George's life at the same time, and then it'll be a special, like, you know, choose your adventure type of movie.
Well, that's what the other thing I was thinking about too. You have these 4 separate stories, and do they culminate like towards the end of the film, that each one is coming into the backstage at the Ed Sullivan Theater or some other event where they're, you know, they're about to break and become the Beatles that we know, the worldwide phenomenon.
It's interesting. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's. I would be really surprised if the movies aren't like the whole arc. You know, that it's them through the beat, like it's sort of it's probably, you know, in whatever 2 hours, it is, you know, up until some end point in their life, whether it's George's death and John's death, or, you know, Paul and Ringo making Here and Now or whatever. I don't know, whatever, you know, or an all-star tour for Ringo is kind of the end of it, and, you know, Paul have a huge crowd in, you know, South America is like the, you know, it's kind of like where they are today kind of thing. But I think it covers the whole thing.
It seems like you could that you could easily have like a Netflix or Disney Channel series going the way they, you know, I mean, if they were able to do the Sex Pistols one in 6 episodes or 8 episodes.
We got actual footage.
I know, but I think it's just like, I'm thinking more like, you know, the Crown, that this could go on for like a few seasons.
Oh, you're kidding me. I actually think it could run as long as friggin' Cheers. Like, what do you know, it's like, yeah, no, I think that,
they do a series, not an individual movie.
And for Beatles stuff is insatiable. It could go on forever, as you see. there's hundreds and hundreds of books about them. There's like, we're talking about like they're going to do 4 movies. We just had like every year there's like a remastered box set or whatever, something. So I mean, the point would, it's almost sort of like, you'll drink as much water as they're willing to give us, but you don't want to drown the person either, So,
Just dole it out.
I think they've actually done a pretty good job of saturating without drowning. You know what I mean? Like, they've come close a couple times. Paul can do that every now and then. Like, I don't.
Do you think the Beatles, the remaining Beatles, prompted this, or did that director, that Sam Mendes was the, one who's driving this and saying, "I'd like to do"? Did he approach them and say, "I'd like to do the"?
It's a good question. I would think they're endlessly approached about things, and so it's hard to even get an audience to have the conversation because it's just like no. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Do you think that Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, their collective mind trust, it came up with the idea to put out 4 different biopic movies? I kind of think that it was probably someone pitching. You know what I mean? Like, why? It's got to be someone pitching.
I mean, it's weird because you only can imagine that. Okay, I'm going to pitch, and you go, and I'm going to guarantee you, $100 million. They're like, we could put out Here and Now. We could remaster Hard Day's Night.
See, here's an interesting question then for you, John. Like, at this point now, is it about the money there? Like, when you're making a pitch, are you going with the money, or is it all about just securing the legacy a little bit more? Like, yeah, we should cover this while we can still put it under the,
I agree. I think it's all about it's not even it's protecting the legacy, but it's sort of keeping it. It's feeding the another generation, like that they're not forgotten, right? That it's always.
But you said before there was still a money angle to.
No, that's what. But that was my point. I was just saying is like they're not going to give a crap about money.
That's right? What I would think at this point. It's more like, okay, it's gonna generate money for them, and I'm sure that's all well and good. But whatever perpetuates their little, corner of the market, and the legacy, it's all legacy stuff.
Well, I'm thinking if it is a pitch, then he's going to them and saying, "I want to do the story of John Lennon." Like, he's pitching one of them, and they're saying, "Well, we're not going to agree to it unless you do individual movies on all 4 of us."
I don't know enough about him to know, is he a Beatle fan? Is he like the guy pitching, or is it just like, or is it somebody, Tony, going like? And I can get you Sam Mendes too,
Like saying before, when it's like, hey, look what this has done for Queen and Elton John. Like, these are truly successful movies. They get Oscars. I do find it kind of interesting that it's not a Beatles movie, though, right? And it's because
again that goes to my point of where I'm saying maybe he did approach and say, "I want to do a Beatles biopic," and they're like, there's way too much material. There's way too much going on. What if you were to do?
Or to, as we sort of talked to this, maybe, right, this is his brainstorm with his people, like that Mendes. It's like, you know what? The Beatles are 4 Elvises, right? That's like, they're it's like, why would you, like, there's a story there, each of it. Like, at this point, it's almost like you can't tell the story of the Beatles in drama because everyone knows the reality of it. It's so much minutia. You would. Because even like, I mean, one of the things that we could talk about tonight is all these different movies that kind of like, and the things that are always kind of interesting are the ones that kind of touch on, they really expand specific parts of the Beatles, like moments. There's like there's a movie just about like John and Brian Epstein's Spanish vacation together. That's always been sort of so it's completely dramatized. There's one that's called Two of Us that's about Paul and John watching Saturday Night Live when they made the offer, and it's kind of triggers off of that, right? It's completely made up. It's fan fiction for all it's worth. But then I just saw, because I'd seen it a while ago, and then I dug it back up. Have you seen Nowhere Boy? Like, that was pretty good. Like, that was like,
Yep.
Tell me about that one. What was that?
So
when did it come out?
It's just John as a boy living with Mimi. Like, it's just the death of his mother, his relationship with his mother. It's just that period, and his also his uncle that who dies too, who he was very
Uncle
close.
George.
Yeah. Who bought him? Did he give him a harmonica or something? I'm trying to think.
Like, he just was a soft touch, and he was Mimi's husband, and he was a soft touch, and John loved him, and he up and died one day, and just added to John's misery and isolation and stuff like that, and
Yeah, and the story kind of spins his death as like when it sort of triggers him connecting with his mother, who he was being raised by, because she was a bit of a wild child. They kind of make her, and so he kind of reconnects.
He's also now 15, 16, so he's got some wind under his sails.
Teaches him like some ukulele chords and stuff like that, and plays records, plays some, she's kind of into fun music, and it's so you know what I mean. So that I think people are like, those are interesting stories, and I don't know. So it's kind of interesting how they might do this, or maybe each of them are different. Like
I like the singing too in that movie, by the way. When the band goes in to cut the single, and they do "In Spite of All the Danger," that the band that does the soundtrack stuff. It's a nice job. Like, that sounds great.
When did this film come out, roughly?
Good question.
Early 2000s, I'm going to say, because it is.
Okay.
Who's that woman that plays Aunt Mimi? She's a famous English actress. Massive. What's her name?
Silence.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
Meryl Streep. No.
But she's a huge, super duper.
Yeah.
English actress.
Then just not to switch things, but so, like, did you see the movie Across the Universe, where it's sort of just used all the Beatles songs?
I did not see all of that. I've kind of tried to dip into that, and
right. So, like, and it's completely based on characters in Beatles movies. Like, it's kind of like, right, like a woman crawls in through a window, and they play "She Came In Through the Bathroom Window." It's like it kind of tells this story using plot lines,
characters from the songs.
Yeah, so it's kind of and if anything, it's almost like the lyrics kind of fit into their story, rather than it's like, oh, we're gonna have, but there is a character Lucy, and there is a so they there's not much.
So for a movie like that is an individual who's written this story, and then he goes and pitches it.
He has to get a license to use the song, so right, and so they have to get full blessing from all the writers, and Sony Music Publishing, and Sony Music Publishing with Beatles stuff doesn't do anything without their permission.
What was that other big one that came out? The one with where the schism in time.
Yesterday.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was a good popcorn movie.
Yeah, absolutely, totally lightweight. It was gonna, the had the best joke in it was that when he goes to Google, Oasis doesn't exist either.
Right. That was fun. That was cute. I like the girl.
Yeah. Ed Sheeran was a better actor than I thought, even though I can't believe he delivered.
It's so great that he just took second fiddle, like he knows that he should.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me like him anymore.
Then I was trying to think of so you mentioned Backbeat. I have it's really hard to find it to watch, but I have fond memories of it. Like like the soundtrack, it's Beatles Berlin or Hamburg period.
Yeah.
the band that's actually that they're miming to is Don Fleming, Thurston Moore, and Greg Dooley from the Afghan Wigs. Like, are the
I'm
best.
aware of that. I read that in Thurston's book.
They must have loved that.
They're playing, the Beatle cover songs of the period. And it sounds. Greg Dooley is a great choice because it's just that rough, like not quite, can't quite sing, but he, it's in tune. Yeah, and it was, it was rough. I just remember it was being fun, but I think like Dick Clark produced it or something.
Was David
That
Grohl
was the
playing
one
the
with.
drums?
David Grohl wasn't born yet, I think. When this
It was the
it was in the
It was
90s.
the Stuart Sutcliffe movie, though, right?
Yeah,
More
right.
the backbeat one.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of who's that handsome guy that was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he went on to a pretty. I
saw him not long ago in a movie with. We're so terrible. It's like,
we're old men.
I saw him in this other movie with a guy. I can't remember.
So the movie's from '94.
Yeah.
And it's Stephen Dorff. That's who the guy.
That's who the guy is. Yeah.
The woman who plays Astrid in it, she was also from Twin Peaks fame.
Peaks. Yes, that's right. Yeah, she was.
And I didn't love her as Astrid. I wanted Astrid to be more. She didn't. Astrid's an interesting character because I don't really know her personality, so I still want to romanticize that she's some, super duper artistic, intellectual, sexy woman that saw the genius and all that kind of stuff. And that woman wasn't cutting it. And there is no Astrid, biography out there that I'm aware of.
You hit on something there. Now we're talking.
Oh, so hey, you're gonna love this. So I found here's all the people that played on the record. So the vocals of Paul McCartney were done by Dave Pirner from Soul Asylum.
Huh.
The vocals were done by Greg Dooley of Afghan Wigs. The guitars were done by Thurston Moore, Sonic Youth. Don Fleming, who's I know more as a producer, but he had his band Gumball. The bassist was Mike Mills from REM.
Who kept it all together.
Yeah.
The vocals of Stuart Sutcliffe, Henry Rollins, and drums,
David Grohl.
You got it.
Where's the new car I get?
No.
Dave Grohl and Mike Mills locking it in. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can play with anybody. Yeah. Nobody more solid than Mike Mills.
Right, so one of the songs that covers Long Tall Sally, which I actually had an interesting work scenario today, this week with Long Tall Sally. We had one of our clients represents little pieces of the Elvis Presley publishing catalog. And we saw a claim come in for Long Tall Sally. I'm like, wait a second, isn't that like Bumps Blackwell that wrote that? Why is Elvis? And for Elvis Presley's recordings of the song in the U.S., Elvis gets 6%. But the rest of it is 100% part of Sony Publishing, who controls the Bumps Blackwell catalog. How about that? That's how much clout.
Yeah.
Elvis would like. It was a hit friggin' song, but it's like, well, you will make a lot of money because it'll be on an Elvis album. And if you want it, we could do another song. If you want to be on it, I'm getting 6%, for at least from the records I sell. So,
wow.
What would have been typical in that period, or what is typical is the artists.
The typical is the songwriters get paid.
Get all of it. Get 100% of it.
Well, the people who write the song.
I know. I'm asking. I don't know.
But the original version is Little Richard, right?
Wow.
I mean, it's
Richard Penniman and Bumps Blackwell. Yep, both those catalogs are so. But Little Richard and Bumps Blackwell wrote the song, but when it's like, well, I get a piece of the publishing.
Both of those guys, both Paul McCartney and Little Richard, when they open up that song, they do it differently because like Richard's is a little bit more Mary, You know, he's got that in there, whereas Paul McCartney's and Mary, you know, like a little bit more together, but they're both thrilling openings, you know, that are just flat. They hit the ground running, you know, and the band catches right up with them.
John,
Yeah.
is Colonel Tom Parker working that deal, or is there someone else behind there, like a lawyer, you know, his legal team, or
Colonel Tom Parker, but yeah, there's a whole. They have Elvis has a publishing guy, and it's not like Tom's on the phone with everybody. Like, he's sort of like, yeah, you know, yeah, hey, Elvis is going to record this song, right? So, but you know, we're only going to include it on the record. You know, he takes a piece, and you know, and at the time, it's kind of like. Like this is similar. I think I might have told this story where the theme song to the Conan O'Brien late night show was written 100% by Jimmy Vivino.
but former guitar teacher at the Ackermans.
So this story might be sad for you. So the band that does it, that the musical director was Max Weinberg. Right, he was the led the band, and Jimmy was in the band or whatever.
He was in the band, right?
So it's like, so Conan likes this song. We're gonna put it. Max is like, we could do this. I was thinking about maybe writing something myself or whatever. Blah blah blah. But how about Jimmy? We'll use your song, but I get a piece of the publishing.
Max Weinberger pulled that stunt.
Yes, but yeah.
Weinberg, sorry.
And he well, but to a point is, it's like, Tony, I will give you $100,000, but you have to give me $25,000 when you make your, or maybe I'm going to give you, I'm going to make $100,000, and you're going to get $50,000, and I'm going to get $50,000, or I could just, you know, do some improv thing or figure something out or whatever, and I could keep it all myself.
Yeah, keep it all myself. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
You know,
it's a cutthroat industry.
Famously, right? Paul Anka wrote the Tonight Show theme, and you know, it was like made him a boatload of money. And almost everything after that is whenever someone had their own talk show, they would get a songwriting credit or literally write their theme song. Like Arsenio Hall wrote the theme song to his show because it just guaranteed, like, it's going to be played every night on national television. Ka-ching, right? The networks have to pay for it.
Did he really write it, or just somebody else write it and he put his name?
It is the theme song, Arsenio. But think about it, right? I'm going to write a theme song, so I'm going to go da 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 da. You guys play it. I wrote it, right?
Yep.
Even to write music, it's my freaking 30-second.
Interesting, yeah.
No, it's sorry to bring it back down, but that's
no, you may have sparked a new you know, got to go in this.
But it's, I mean, the same thing, like an artist manager. What does the artist manager do? It's like, look, I know all these people, I'll connect you, blah blah blah, but I get 20% of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll take this opportunity to point out, since we're just talking about sort of the incidental music to the Ready Steady Go show. There's a Beatles on Ready Steady Go, and as they're going into, I think they open with maybe From Me to You, they're playing the Ready Steady Go theme, or
3, 2, 1, that one.
See, I don't know if they're playing that or if they're just playing some sort of rock music, and then they go into the song, and it's totally awesome. It's like, what is that? You're like, what the hell song is that they're playing? And because it sounds like Beatle guitars playing a rock song, and you're like, the hell is that? And then
I know the original episodes of Ready Steady Go used 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 by Manfred Mann as the theme. Great. And then, but yeah, I think it eventually had its own theme song. But the Beatles were on very early. Actually, I'm trying to remember, were the Beatles on? Maybe it was actually, I want to say, because I'm just reading that 63 book, and that might have been like the 5th anniversary or something crazy.
It could have been 63, right?
Okay. Because that was that's I've been what's his name was like the teenage like intern and then became running the shows. The guy who Ethan Hogg, who directed Let It Be. Lindsay.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Michael Lindsay Hogg.
Michael Lindsay Hogg. But let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything that has the when did it start? Yeah, August of '63. So the Beatles were like on like the third show, and they were on it a bunch of times. So it said, okay. The theme was always "The Weekend Starts Here," and it was introduced first. It was "Wipeout" by the Safaris. Then it was "5, 4, 3, 2, 1" by Manfred Mann. Then it was Manfred Mann's "Hubble Bubble Toil and Trouble," and finally "Going Home" by the Stones. Those were the theme songs. And they think they're not confirmed, but "Anyway, Anywhere, Anyhow" by the Who might have been a theme for a very short period as the opener. So it was only on 3 years, from August of '63 to August of '66. What was the show I was thinking of that they were on like the fifth anniversary? Oh, it was like, you know what it was? It was like Saturday Club or something like that. It was one of those BBC shows.
But that's BBC stuff, right? That was not. Was that television broadcast, or was that strictly
That was a
radio broadcast? Right. With Brian Matthews.
Yes, who would joke with them quite a bit. I was going to say there was one other movie I wanted to ask about. I don't know if you'd seen it. Where's my stupid list? Probably the greatest Beatles related movie is the Ruddles. All You Need Is Cash. By the way, that is fantastic. If two movies that I've heard forever about and have almost no interest in seeing them, but they're so similar to Across the Universe was a movie, and I remember seeing the box set everywhere because it was a cutout like instantaneously, called All This in World War II. Does that spell with you?
I remember coming across that in some reading. Yeah, that was in like in the early '70s.
It was like, I want to say it was mid '70s, and it's all Beatles songs, and it's very similar to Across the Universe, but it's kind of it's like very war centric, So it's very strange, very strange movie.
Who was behind that, and how does that get going?
Good question. That's I'm gonna have to. Unfortunately, this drives Chris nuts. I'm gonna have to Google that one.
Google.
Yes. Okay. This is from 1976. It is a musical documentary. Susan Winslow is the director. It juxtaposes Beatles songs covered by a variety of musicians with World War II news footage. How about that? The film was rejected by critics and ran only 2 weeks. The film features clips of Nazi Germany, Army newsreels, 20th Century Fox and other studio footage, propaganda films, Jack Benny, blah, 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 blah. Wow, this is crazy. The film was researched by Tony Palmer, who did that BBC documentary on rock and roll that John Lennon was in, and it features Cream. I think I've shown you guys. I've sent you guys clips of that on YouTube. It was like kind of the first serious rock documentary kind of thing, called "All You Need Is Love: The Story of Popular Music." But so he did on it.
So they must have had to approve it, right?
Absolutely. You couldn't. Yeah. But at the time, it's funny. It didn't become like, so the Beatles broke up, and there was like, the Beatles kind of like weren't cool for a while, right? It wasn't, honestly, it was probably around, after John was killed, that it kind of sort of came back. Like, that's how you got away. Like, even the Ruddles, or like everyone's kind of making fun of it, like this ridiculous thing. But
well, I don't know. There was Beatlemania came out, and that was a huge thing.
Huge success.
Like I went and saw that on Broadway and stuff like that. That was massive. And then there was a Beatle revival thing in New York City where like Got to Get You Into My Life. It's like in the top 10 in 1976. And
but I'm just saying, but it's not it's not where it is now. Like I think there was an element of like it's like
Agreed. It's
oldies, you know what I mean? The same, it's almost like you would it doesn't feel that way now, but right, it was kind of like thinking about, it was like the way you would think about Chuck
but
Berry.
all four Beatles are actively at the time putting out solo records, which dilutes the whole, Beatles. Like there's no.
But so licensing Beatles songs isn't nearly as tough as it is now. Like, right, it would be very fresh. So just so you know, so the movie the movie Shampoo with Warren Beatty.
Sure.
Hit movie, but it wasn't. I mean, you didn't know it was going to be hit when it was being put. I mean, it was Warren Beatty during it, but it was. But so the party scenes there, they're like it's a whole bunch of different songs from Sgt. Pepper, because that's kind of like they're at this stoner party and everyone's listening to this. It's like supposed to be like the new Beatles record is out and everyone's listening to it. Right, so it's like, so you hear that, no problem. WKRP in Cincinnati would play Beatles songs all the time.
Oh, really?
It would be like, hey, and that was the Beatles, Let It Be, and they would have a lot of regular. So it didn't become precious until, somewhere, when licensing music became like such a big deal, when it was like a lot of times you said no, this was kind of like after the fact. It's like, well, they're not together anymore, whatever. I guess the first time I remember the real shutdown is, remember there was the Nike commercial with that had Revolution in it, and that was like a big, like, oh, the Beatles are selling sneakers.
Yeah, right.
Instead of being on a TV show or in a movie.
We blame that on Michael Jackson, though.
Exactly, and it's true. I mean, but it was weird. It actually had the Capitol recording in it too. So I think that either that got by without an approval. It's like, well, we own these records, we could do it, even though, I mean, it's Apple. So right, it's an Apple recording. You would need Apple to approve it, or it's like, someone is like, we need to blame somebody. I know I said yes to this, but this looks bad. You take the fall.
Right. I could believe that. Sure. But we'll take the money right now.
John, explain the Michael Jackson owned a share of the rights, or all of what was 100%. His 100% for how long?
Still does.
His estate, yeah.
What did he buy? ATV?
Yeah, he bought Sony ATV. He bought ATV, and then the catalog was so big, he partnered with Sony to create Sony ATV Music Publishing. So he owns all the publishing. Now, he doesn't own those sound recordings. The sound recordings belong to Apple. And Apple's still controlled by the Beatles, the estates.
Paul McCartney has never been able to wrest those back away from.
Well, it's really I mean, there's at least 2 or 3 times where both John and Paul and Yoko could have bought it, and they balked.
What period was? I guess that would have been in the 70s.
Oh, well, no. So literally in '68, there's like Alan Klein.
Oh, you're going back. Okay.
Fighting over, like, they lose, like, so. Dick James is right. Dick James, Brian Epstein, Paul, and John own the company. Like, those are the owners of the company, and the kind of the really one of the bombs that divides the Beatles, right? So Alan Klein comes in, and what John finds out is Paul has been buying shares on the market for the public piece of Northern Songs, because they've kind of over times it's moved from a private entity to it's trading, but they're the majority owners and whatever. So, but as shares have become available, Paul has been buying shares, and John takes this personally, like, wait a second, you were buying shares back? He's like, yeah, well, when shares become available, like, you could buy them too. And he was kind of the mind, is like, well, why wouldn't, if you were buying shares, why wouldn't you tell me and we would buy them together? Like, you know what I mean? I totally get John's take on it, but at the same time, it's like, well, John, if you weren't paying attention, they were, and so Paul ended up actually owning a little more. And then it became this whole thing where they were renegotiating with EMI, and they were going to sell the EMI, and it just became this, and it became a battle between uh, uh, Linda's
The Eastmans and the Kleins.
John Eastman, was it John? Right, John was
Lee Eastman.
Right, Lee was the father, right? So Lee is battling Alan Klein, and they're both of their egos kind of got in there. Like Alan actually was going like, no, we should do this together. We'll end up we'll gain ownership. I'm sure Alan would have ended up with a piece owning it himself too, but ultimately Lee Eastman kind of like played his hand too much, and as a result, the guy who had ATV, which was a huge television production organization in Europe,
This is Lew Grade.
Grade bought Dick James's shares and bought EMI's share, and eventually got so much of it that they were able to wrestle. Like it left John and Paul. All he could do is like sell their shares. Like it was sort of a leverage takeover. So that's how, so they lost control. So they kind of screwed that up. Like between Alan Klein and Paul's listening to his side, and like they couldn't cooperate to save their own asses there. But then
Sir Lew Grade, by the way.
And famously, John Lennon, around the time of the rock and roll album in '75, I think like his last television appearance, there is a tribute to Lew Grade, and he has to perform on it. And so he comes out and he performs "Stand By Me" with his band, and they all have masks on the back of their heads. Right, it was kind of this weird, kind of almost kabuki looking thing, and they're all and they would turn around and they would have these like blank face masks on the back of their head, and John said it was his way of showing that he thought Lew Grade was two-faced. Like that was kind of his little dig.
Yeah.
John with that orange jumpsuit on.
Yeah, they're all back. And I think they're lip syncing too, if I remember correctly. But it's just not particularly good. You could find it on Google. But then the whole thing came around where Yoko and Paul could have bought the whole catalog, but they would have had to bought all of ATV. And Paul kept saying, "Well, I just want the Beatles songs," and no one was interested in selling just that. And so to a certain, he's like, "I'll give you $20 million for the Beatles songs," and they're like, "No, the whole thing is 35 or 40 million. It's crazy money." Blah blah. And then Michael Jackson eventually comes in and buys the whole thing for like $50 million. And so that was kind of like, Paul's like, "Yoko, should we do it?" And Yoko's like, "That's a lot of money. We shouldn't do blah, blah, blah." And Paul like, "Yeah, you're right. That's too much money." And so that's when Michael Jackson, so he had 2 or 3 opportunities before Michael Jackson upped the ante and bought it, because he's like, "I don't want this." It's like, obviously in retrospect. And so he talking about how it was stolen from him or what, no one, they didn't sell it to him, but he cheaped out a little on that because he had the money too, Right? But Paul kind of famous for doing a couple of he went to Columbia Records for a couple records and went back to Capitol. And we went back to Capitol. One of his negotiation of it going back to Capitol was his share. He got a bigger percentage of Beatles record royalties. So, and that was kind of part of the fight for the end of Apple. Like it ended up resulting in all the Beatles getting an extra piece because everyone got pissed when it's like, how did Paul get more? And but so, but it was like Paul would, that's why to a certain extent it was kind of like the end of the day, right? Like you're no longer in this group together, and Paul's looking out for himself, and they would take that personal, because you got to remember, they go back to being like freaking 14. No,
That's amazing.
So anyway, okay, it's
all right.
Sorry. No,
That's good. I think we're buttoning up. It's a good point.
What's interesting, just to sort of close out they're covers of Beatles songs that are in it. So it's not Beatles songs that are actually in. Well, the songs are, but the performances aren't in this. All this in World War II, but it does have. It has the version of Elton John, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is in it, which actually has John on it. The Bee Gees, Golden Slumbers, which essentially leads to the Sergeant Pepper movie, which I've never seen. I don't know. Have you guys ever seen the Sergeant Pepper movie?
I think when it was on like HBO or something in the early 80s.
Leo,
Late 70s,
I'm the Walrus. How about
Leo
that?
Sayers, is that what you said?
Sarah, I am the Walrus.
Wow.
But it's got like Brian, she's leading on. Keith Moon does When I'm 64. Rod Stewart does Get Back. Let's see, who else is it? And the Four Seasons doing We Can Work It On. We could work it out. Frankie Lane does Maxwell Silver Hammer. The Brothers Johnson doing Hey Jude.
Do you think this was made as kind of like a trippy, like midnight theater kind of thing? Midnight showing? I think it was...
like social commentary. And, but I guess people did not like it.
They didn't get it.
Turner does Come Together. I've heard that before, though. I think it's an older recording. But Peter Gabriel doing Strawberry Fields Forever.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. But I just remember this box set was in the cutout bins forever. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, what do you think Ethan could get for it now?
It's funny, I don't see it. I used to see it all the time. So, but I mean, we're talking probably 35 years ago now, 40 years ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. For the vinyl resurgence.
Yeah, I'll have to Discogs it.
Yep.
The other piece of trivia that I wanted to throw out, because Chris hits this all the time too, is Andy Summers' age versus George Harrison's age.
Oh, yeah.
George would have been 81 in like a couple weeks ago, and Andy Summers turned 81 in December. So
those guys are the same age, similar age.
Andy's older than George.
George Harrison. Wow.
And right, and it's like we know he was right. He was in like a very late version, like 68, 69 version of Eric Bird and the Animals. That's the first I'm aware of Andy Summers. But even that,
oh wow, I had no idea.
Before that, though, right? It's like George is already. The Beatles are about to break up, and they're the same age. No. Yeah. George is a youngster.
And he finds those two playing the clubs or somewhere in London, I guess. Staying and.
Well, they're a band with another guitar. The Police exist as with another guitarist who's not particularly good, but and then they I think he answers an ad or something like that.
I thought the story, what I can remember him saying is that he said he saw those guys and were like, I'm joining. He approached them and was like, I'm going to be your new guitar player.
I don't know. But I think that's kind of they're like, this guy could really play guitar, and they tossed out the other guys. So
that's amazing. I had no idea he was that much older than those guys.
But he was, so I keep trying to figure out who's the oldest living rock star. I mean, it is it's tough. I don't know who's like. It's hard
Who
to figure.
knew that Andy Summers was so high on the list? And the answer to that is Yoko Ono.
So Willie Nelson,
come on.
90.
Yeah.
I know Willie's not really a rock star, but
no, he is a rock star. He's phenomenal. Go see
Yoko's
91
though. Yoko's 91.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's alive. That's I mean,
rock star.
You've been listening to the Beatdown.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll pick it up on another episode.
I don't like doing the Yoko beat it up thing. I'm just saying the rock star thing. Yeah. I don't think Madonna's a rock star, but I get it.
Come on now.
No, she's a star. But
Kiss Me Love.
But I mean, I think Yoko almost gets involved a little later to be, my rule of thumb is you're not a rock star if you didn't party in Marrakesh. That's kind of my rock star definition.
She was a cloud in India, John. She was a come on. Come on.
Oh, that's right. I guess that's right. They know it's like she doesn't become a rock star until John says she's a rock star, which is like when she sings on the White Album. Is that when that's her moment when she's
There, he has met her, and they are in India when he starts thinking about her all the time. So that's 1967.
68.
68 they're in India, or 67?
68. They're there April, May, or March, April.
Yeah, it is that late.
Right, because they don't write Magical Mystery Tour. They write the White Album.
Right.
Tony,
Mother should know.
Yes, your mother, you should know.
I had to dig my script out.
Really? For episode 57, you haven't memorized?
Well, I just want to make sure, I want to have it down here, make sure I'm not missing anything important.
You're listening to the Beatdown.
There you go, Chris. You shout it out. Where are we available on?
Apple, Stitcher, Cashbox.
Stitcher no longer exists.
Okay.
That's why I had to look at my list, and it's really.
Your podcast, except for Spotify.
Say it again. I think you cut out.
Wherever you get your podcasts, except for Spotify.
That's right. We are not welcome on Spotify. Who needs that fly-by-night operation anyway? If you have something to say, email us at thebeatdownmusicpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for listening. There's always more. There's always next week.
Right.
Right?